alive and sung. Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our times. The slogan that's echoed throughout the streets of Hong Kong and now echoes throughout the world. Information found by Nicole Ann Lowe, a Master of Philosophy at Cambridge University, from Commonweal Magazine, published on September 19, 2019. We've all had to fight for something, whether that be an extended curfew, a starting spot on the varsity, or even now a pursuit for higher education. The Hong Kong protests are a series of demonstrations against the existing government system. First, I will talk about the region of Hong Kong. Second, the reasons for protest. Third, the demonstrations being performed. And fourth, the response to said demonstrations. Before we can talk about the region, before we can talk about the protests, we need to know why the region of Hong Kong is special. According to the United States Congress, the elected governing body of the United States, under the Sino-British Joint Declaration on the Question of Hong Kong, ratified May 27, 1985, the region known as Hong Kong is a territory which belongs to China. The once British colonial ruled territory known as Hong Kong was negotiated and given to China under set conditions. Under the declaration, China would operate Hong Kong under the framework of one country, two systems, until 2047 at least. Because of this, Hong Kong operates under its own limited democracy government, but is still overseen by mainland China. Currently, Hong Kong is controlled by the chief executive, Carrie Lam, and her cabinets. Now that we understand the special situation which is Hong Kong, we can now talk about the reasons for protest. According to Robin View, the director of North American Economist Intelligence Unit from The Economist magazine, published on July 6, 2019, the most recent cause of protest was the consideration of the extradition bill, a bill that would allow people accused of crimes in mainland China to be sent there for trial. And then another reason is the limited democracy of which Hong Kong operates under. Hong Kong, they have elections there, but all candidates are screened by a mainland China-backed nominating committee that checks if yes or no if they can be put on the ballot. For example, last year the pro-independence Hong Kong National Party was denied from being put on the ballot for the election. Another reason are forms of government corruption. This comes in as disproportionate influence of money, government-funded triads, and private government interests. And then according to Alan Cheng, a financial journalist and due diligence expert specializing in the China region, published on January 6th, 2019, January 12th, 2015, the people of Hong Kong are protesting for true democracy, political reform, and civil rights such as universal suffrage to be honored. Now that we are aware of the turmoil and what the people of Hong Kong want, we can talk about the demonstrations they are putting on. In light of this turmoil, there are tons of protests being put on by millions of people. In response to the extradition bill, over 1 million residents took the streets of Hong Kong and protested the bill. And then according to John Simpson, an English foreign correspondent and Magdalene University fellow, from the Spectator magazine, published on June 15, 2019, the umbrella movement, which started in 2014, protesters are marching with umbrellas to shield themselves from rain, pepper spray, and tear gas used against them by authorities. And then another demonstration put on recently was the storming of the Legislative Council, or better known as the Legco building. Protesters stormed the Legco building and branded British colonial flags as a way to remind people what the foundations of Hong Kong were meant to be built on. And the final demonstration I'll talk about was the Occupy movement. The Occupy movement is a political movement that strives to achieve real-world democracy across the world. This has been adopted into the Hong Kong protests, but it mainly takes the form of internet activism, such as raising awareness and promoting the protests, and then promoting dates for organization of the demonstrations to be taking place. And now that we understand what the people of Hong Kong are doing for protests, we can look at the response to these protests. The following, in response to these protests, a battle has begun between the people of Hong Kong and their own government. In response, the authorities have begun using non-lethal means to dismiss protesters, such as tear gas, pepper spray, riot squads, and closing of, or I didn't say closing, but similar to it. The following quote was said in response to the authorities' increased use of force, the escalation of punishment requires an escalation of sacrifice. According to Jingyi Zhao, a Master of Arts degree holder and independent researcher for the Manyculture Journal of Media and Communication, published in 2017, the official Chinese media have been forbidden to report on anything relating to the protests. Online censors in Hong Kong and China have removed mentions of it anywhere on the internet in Hong Kong and China. And then the popular social media platform Weibo, which is being used for the protests and is listed as the second largest social media platform in China, has been heavily censored. A case study was conducted in which 2 months of data were collected, 2,336 posts were collected which were censored and taken down, all relating to just the Occupy movement. 90% of these were taken down within 7 hours, and 34% were taken down within the hour. First, I talked about the region of Hong Kong. Second, I talked about the causes of protest. Third, I talked about the demonstrations being performed. And fourth, I talked about the responses to the demonstrations. The Hong Kong protests are a series of demonstrations against the existing government system. In light of the protests, what they're fighting for, and what's actually going on, I truly believe that we are witnessing the revolution of our times. Thank you.
622.